Okay, thank you so much. Diogenes, I've never seen a presentation with Viagra and a gun in it. I think that's the first I've ever seen of that. Easy, Claude. I'm Michael Cardy. I'm Chief Strategist for Red Hat in Canada. So I spent a lot of time visiting the executives in our client base, talking about business strategy and how that translates into software and technologies to enable that. I got the wrong clicker, you're telling me? Okay. Thank you. And so I spent a lot of time with all the major vertical markets, understanding where people are going. I am a strategist, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Today I'm pinch hitting. I'm actually pinch hitting for Intel, who couldn't get a speaker to talk today, but Intel and Red Hat. Red Hat, you like my red shirt today? I took a lot of flack last night, by the way, by our executive team, saying you should not be wearing that, but thank you for the applause. Intel and Red Hat have been together since the beginning of going after open source technologies in enterprise, and they continually invest heavily with us, both in events such as this, but also with customers and doing pilots and proof of concepts, and they are such a strategic partner for us. They're a common thread in terms of all the hardware vendors that we certify our products against. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Intel today. I thought if I'm delivering part of their presentation, I have some creative license, so I've added some Red Hat slides in there. But the title of the presentation is Vortex of Change. Wow, you know, we got so much change going on. What a day, like all the technologies we talked about, how it applies in customer environments. But, you know, not only do we have changing business models, we have different ways of doing architecture. We're taking the old assembly line approach to how we deliver value within IT. We're saying that's basically wrong. We're taking a DevOps approach, or we're changing how we structure the organization, fundamentally the processes, the relationship between people in the organization. And I think the most important thing that we're embarking on is changing the culture of how we run IT. So today I'm going to talk about some of the things that are going on in the market. So I am the closer today. How many people know who this fine gentleman is? Any Blue Jay fans out there? Good call. Thank you, Rick. Apparently he's a Red Hat fan. I didn't know that. And apparently the Blue Jays like Red Hat too, right? So being a former pitcher, I appreciate the art and the craft and the science of pitching. You know, when you look at Roberto, he's always adjusting his game as he goes. And of course, a closer, what does a closer have in terms of what he brings to the table usually? What has he got? He's got speed, right? Number one, he can throw the ball hard. And I think when we look at our businesses and how the markets are changing, it's all about speed. Speed wins at the end of the day. But also during the game, he'll be adjusting how he approaches. He'll have a game plan, but he'll be adjusting based on the context of the game. So he's got to be agile. Just like when I talk to executives, it's about two things. Sure, there's operational cost reduction and those types of considerations, but it's all speed and agility. How do I get business speed and agility enabled through software and technologies? So we talked a lot about technology today. In fact, I don't think I have one slide talking about Red Hat technology. I think we've been through all that. But I do have one question around cloud computing. Does anybody want to sort of define cloud computing or maybe throw out some attributes of cloud computing, as we've been talking about it all day? Anybody want to take an idea or take a chance and shout out an aspect of cloud computing? Anyone? Yeah? Scalability. Shared services. Somebody else's capital expense. That's a big one for a lot of customers I talk to. They want to get out of the data center game. Anything else? Multi-tenancy. Wow, you guys are really smart. You've been listening all day. Actually, you're all wrong. You're all wrong. Cloud computing is actually a horse. You guys know who this horse is? Cloud computing? He won the Preakness this year. The third jewel in the Triple Crown. Can you believe that? And what's fascinating about this, cloud computing won at 13-to-1 odds. Pretty good payout. Look who he beat. Classic Empire. Right? So we look at these, these startups that are starting to take over the market. These unicorns, I think Brent used the term unicorn. You guys know what a unicorn is? Unicorn is a startup that has a minimum of $1 billion capitalization, market capitalization. That's basically the definition of it. So the cloud computing is supporting the unicorns to take over the world and beat classic empire, which this is so foretelling of what's happening in the market nowadays. So I'm going to get serious for a moment. I'm a strategist. This is Jim Whitehurst. Jim made a very, very bold statement, and I'm going to agree with him. He's a strategist as well. He came from the Boston Consulting Group, and he was one of the guys that put Delta back on the map when they had troubles. And you know, as a strategist, you're doing three main things. You're defining a strategic position, where you want to be in the marketplace, how you differentiate yourself, how you position your company, and how do you define where you are in 3 to 5 years in the future. You define that position. Then you build a plan, right? Build a plan. How am I going to get there? What investments do I need to make? And then the winners usually are the ones that execute best. You can have all the best plans in the world, but the execution is key. And he happens to sit on the boards of many of the biggest companies in the world and rub shoulders with some of the richest people in the world, the multi-billionaires who sit on these boards. And today we talked about digital transformation. I think David started off talking about what that means and how it's reflected in Canada. And you know, for some of you in the room that are in the bigger enterprises, like you own the market in many ways. You're a dominant player. And on the vendor side, like us, we usually go to you and say, basically, you know, digital transformation, it's a tremendous opportunity for you, right? And I'll tell you, the board members of these big companies, you know, they see that opportunity too, but they see it as a threat, number one, right? How am I going to compete against all these little startups that have no legacy? How do I battle against them? If you saw the Diogenes' representation of the Wells Fargo competition, there's hundreds of competitors eating little bits and pieces of the bank. And so basically what he's saying when you say planning is dead, as we know it, there's a little caveat there, he's saying, look, you cannot define a strategic position very, very well. It's clouded. We don't know because the market is hyper-competitive and you don't know where it's going to be in 3 to 5 years, right? What you really need to do is do 2 or 3 things. You got to build a culture, right? We've been talking about culture a lot about DevOps today and how that is changing how we operate businesses. We need to put a structure in place. We got to have the right tooling in place. Basically, you need capabilities to be fast and agile so that you can adapt to the market conditions. And that has to be an agile or an iterative approach, which is very similar to DevOps. So underlying that, he's basically saying you need to reconfigure how you run your business. And of course, I would say business as usual. If I was an executive running a big business, I think business as usual, I would not use that acronym anymore, BAU, you hear it all the time. We are changing all the time. And so you need to be prepared for that. And you can see some of the statistics that we see in the marketplace. So right now is the least amount of change we'll ever see. As we move forward, the pace of change is accelerating. So you need to make investments with a partner who can help you with those capabilities. And I hope today you understand by looking at OpenShift and containers and all the automation, that's what we're doing. All we do at Red Hat is make you fast and agile at the end of the day. Intel calls this the vortex effect. We have all these new technologies and industry trends. Look at distributed ledgers. Blockchain is a big thing. I have conversations with executives around or distributed ledgers, wearable technology, cognitive systems. So all this technology is being thrown at the marketplace, and how do executives adopt this type of technology in their business? One thing we don't explicitly tell you, you may know this, but you got to think about it. Technology choice, the choices you make within your business and who you invest in, is the choices you're actually making and how you innovate. And I'll talk to you about the problems of BC and how they made technology changes, and it showed them how to accelerate their innovation. You know, one strategic position within our company is open source. We believe it's the best way to innovate. In fact, I would say it's the most dominant form of innovation on the planet. There's 33 million contributors to open source innovating all the time. And it's Red Hat's job to take those innovations and make it consumable by the enterprise to make you fast and agile. So when you make decisions on where you're going to invest in your business, those technology choices will define how you innovate. Been a lot of talk about DevOps today and security and digital transformation and how they all link together. You know, when did this all really start? In 2009, in San Jose, there was a conference called Velocity 2009. Two gentlemen got up on stage, John Allspall and Paul Hammond. And at the time, they got up there and said, we're doing 10 deploys per day. And we're doing that in the dev and ops cooperation at a company called Flickr. I think we all know Flickr. And at the time, that was like, wow, 10 deploys a day. That's a mindset change. That's a mindset from, when am I going to put my next release into production? You know, a couple weeks, 3 months, 6 months. In Canada, it's 6 months. You heard the average from Dave from IDC. To a mindset where how many are we going to do today? And on stage, we heard, I think it was TELUS doing 100 deploys per day or 400 deploys per day. Like, we're there in Canada. And this is where it all started. This is when business and technology came together, and it was hard to separate the two. This is when we started to drive speed within technology and IT. And at the time, this was the response, right? People were like, wow, 10 deploys per day? How do I secure that? And Mike Bursell, who was up here early talking about security, he talked about how you could do that, but at the time, that was crazy, 10 deploys per day. How many people have read the Phoenix Project? Okay. How many people are going to read the Phoenix Project? A little homework for you, maybe homework for your bosses. If you really want to understand what DevOps is and where it came from, this is written in plain English. It's an easy read. It's by Gene Kim, Kevin Baer, and George Spafford. It's written a few years ago. You can download it off Amazon, or sometimes we give away copies. But basically, Bill's an IT manager at an assembly line at a manufacturing plant. He's got 90 days to put a project back on the rails, or else he's going to get outsourced. And it basically walks through in layman's English about how we did that, how we streamlined everything. And it's kind of, you'll learn how DevOps works by reading this book, but you won't have to go through all the gobbledygook of technology terms and processes and principles. So I would highly recommend that. They just released the DevOps Handbook. That's Gene Kim, Jez Humble, Patrick Dubois, who was the guy that came up with the term DevOps at a conference in Belgium. And we've been giving those books out today. And John Willis, who's an expert in CI/CD pipelines. This is the how-to book, right? I think I've read this book 15 times. All the principles that you need to apply to become a full DevOps shop and certify yourself is in this book. You don't have to adopt all the principles, and it's going to be a phased approach. But a lot of the stuff that we do in the Open Innovation Labs, those principles are embedded in how we deliver that Mike Walker talked about earlier today. We talked a lot about culture. We kind of skirted the issue. We didn't talk about what type of culture do you need. And this is actually taken from the book I just mentioned, the how-to book. We're talking about different definitions of cultures, and there's 3 up here that most organizations fall into. Scenario A, pathological culture, a culture you do not want to be in. This is when people are leaving the company, right? There's fear, they're feared for their job, they're scared, they're not sharing information. If there's a failure, they're hiding it. Okay? We all know those companies. Scenario B is a bureaucratic company that loves rules and processes, right? So think to yourself, do I fit in one of those two? Right? And they're slow, they're bureaucratic, right? Scenario C is where we're trying to get to, right? We love information, we love to fail because we know we can quickly recover. We're sharing responsibilities. That's the culture you want to be in. And DevOps forces you to do that, okay? This is actually taken from Dr. Winshaw, who is a doctor that focused on predicting the outcomes of an ER room, emergency room, right? Like if you want to define what a good culture needs to look like, you're going to spend a lot of time when the outcome is life or death, right? So this is actually in the book, and it gives you a sense of where you are today. Who are IT leaders in the room? Anybody leads a team? Claude, you lead a team? Right. The leaders in the room, your job is around culture. You need to figure this out. The number one concern our CEO has, and when I was at my old company, the number one concern I had was culture. Culture drives the highest predictor of performance. Okay? One thing to add, culture and tooling have been intertwined since the beginning of time, right? We typically define humankind in terms of our various progressions to where we are today in civilization by tools that we develop. The wheel, the Bronze Age, right? Tools and culture are combined together. And what we're hopefully telling you today through OpenShift, Ansible, Cloud Forms, and some of those technologies, those tools encourage a culture on the right-hand side of the slide. It's cut off up here, but anyways, containers. We've been talking about containers. Boy, that'd be a good drinking game, right? Every time you hear the word container. Anyway, we don't really explicitly say it but we're basically telling you containers are the next atomic unit, the next fundamental building block of how you build IT, right? For various reasons. It allows us to do microservices application architectures, decompose those big monolithic into decomposable services that allow you to do DevOps to each one of those services that make up that comprised application. It lets us run hybrid infrastructure by decomposing those applications into microservices. You can run some of them on site, some of them in the public cloud. You can let different parts of that application scale or shrink based on demand. It also allows you to abstract out those public clouds, right? You can move containers between them. You know, also really fundamentally, and I think Diogenes was touching on this, when you start to run things in containers, you're forcing dev and ops to come together because that construct is an immutable object that has dev and ops in it. We have to work together to production to get that container to production. That's the thing that's going through the, what I call the technology value stream, from development to production. A container is that thing that's immutable and it's moving through that process. And containers allow us to redefine how we structure ourselves. So through DevOps kind of processes. So we've had sort of various waves of compute. We've had bare metal, we had virtual machine, and we're kind of at the late majority to laggards. If you use Greg Moore's IT adoption curve, you know it goes up and down. Containers now are basically the early innovator getting to the early majority stage of the market. And containers, if you're going to change how you build things, you need a management platform to do that, a new management platform. And that's why we call OpenShift the container management platform. It is the core of how you run IT and manage IT. British Columbia. 2 years ago, it took them literally almost 2.5, 3 years to put a major application into production. They're literally doing this in minutes. And forgive me if you're within a government organization today, they're rather bureaucratic and they're rather slow, right? So I figure if I can give you a use case or a case study of a customer in a government entity that can do deployments in minutes. I was with them last Friday in Victoria, and the guy that built this program, he said they spend more time defining the name of the project in OpenShift than they do deploying every environment supporting that new project. It's literally minutes. They've enabled self-service for all developers, right? Literally on the MacBook, like Diogenes, he moves the container from his OpenShift on his laptop right through to production. Elastic infrastructure, they had a use case where they have to inspect all the buses for the students, and they only have 2 months of the year you can do that, right? You know what months those are? July and August, right? Well, in the past, they were buying infrastructure for the entire year and using it, right? This case, they were able to ramp up, do their work, and then ramp it back down. Very elastic. And OpenShift does that right out of the box. They believe in open source so much that they believe that is the dominant way they're going to innovate and collaborate amongst the 27 ministries. But not just the ministries, but the entire world. They actually issue, when they build a new application, they go an open source route, they publish the source code to the internet in GitHub, and they allow the communities to actually do the development for them, and they'll pay those developers, whether they're in Victoria or whether they're in Turkey, for innovating and building those applications. Okay? This also allowed the ministries to look at the source code between them and collaborate, right? So that bus driver, the bus example I just gave you, they reused a lot of that code for a natural resources application that they built literally in 2 weeks. They actually saw some need within the city of Victoria that there was a lot of homeless teenagers that couldn't find somewhere to stay for the night. And they're going to ramp up in July and hopefully be done, 2 4-week sprints, an application, an Airbnb-like application to actually find those homeless teenagers somewhere to sleep at night. So Red Hat is trying to change how we do government services. We're digitizing it, making them very quick. And I thought that was a great example of how that's being done. If you want, you can go to the BC Developers Exchange. You see the URL there, and you actually can see all the source code that they have available and publicized. And they actually won a Red Hat Innovator of the Year for the open source way. They fully embraced and harnessed the power of open source. So if you don't adopt this capability within your organization, the speed and agility, there's a lot of blind spots and opportunities, I guess, for that. You don't want to be the digital prey. You want to be the digital innovators. And the risk of doing nothing, and I urge you, the things I talked about and we talked about today, these are not big projects to get going. Literally, the OpenShift, the Province of BC, we ran a 2-day workshop for the technical teams. We asked them to bring in some code. There's 47 developers. They brought in their code. We showed them how to use the tooling the first day. The second day, they already built mobile applications, some of which went to production the following week. This is not a big endeavor. This is easy to do because of how inherently fast our technology is. When you look at Intel and their IT department, and a lot of you are probably going through this process. I was with the CTO of the Government of Canada yesterday, and they're trying to figure out, what workloads do I put where? And within the Intel IT team, the internal IT team within Intel, the global company, they basically have created these 3 areas of standard, dynamic, and stable in terms of the business value of those applications and classified that. And you can see the top things they're concerned about: control and visibility, variability, viability, business type. And they make decisions on where they're going to put them, what type of cloud, whether it's on-prem or an enterprise hybrid cloud. One thing we really didn't talk about when we talked about OpenShift, by introducing OpenShift into your environment, you have a command and control layer of where you put your applications. And you can use policy to automate that. And we at Red Hatter say we want you to embrace the public cloud, but we want you to do that responsibly. Okay? We want you to make sure that you have control over your destiny. And I think OpenShift is an excellent platform for allowing you to do that. So in closing, I know we're getting pretty thirsty. Speed and agility. Go faster and embrace public cloud responsibly. That's what we're bringing to the table for you. IDC talked a little about, Dave talked a little about this before, but we're in an age now where those companies that innovate and digitally transform themselves and have those capabilities, they're going to accelerate. And there's a certain amount of runway you have to catch them. At some point, you'll never be able to catch them. So you need to innovate very quicker, and you need the capabilities and the culture to do that. Technology choice is innovation, your innovation choice. Mike Walker talked about our innovation labs. We're doing this right now for one of the government agencies in the province of Ontario. And he got a nice email from one of the participants in that. She said, we did more in the last 2 weeks than we've done in the last 6 months. She also said it reignited the passion within the organization on I can actually do something and deploy it to production and see my results. And we're working together as a team. The Open Innovation Lab, although it gives you the tool sets and the process and identify a minimum viable product through a residency, it's really igniting the organization's passion again. It's a very important attribute to that offering. And last thing, we actually have a DevOps event, July 25th, Fadi, is that the right date? Yes. It's in Montreal. Montreal's beautiful in July. It's for clients only. Gene Kim's one of the forefathers of DevOps. Fascinating speaker, full of data. You'll learn so much. It'll open up your eyes to what DevOps really is. And he is one of the authors of the how-to book. And with that, I would like to sincerely thank you for your business. Okay, we are on a hot trajectory at Red Hat. You may have seen the announcement last night or 2 nights ago at 5 o'clock. We beat the street by 3 cents. And our expectations, our stock rose by 10%. We are on such a ramp right now. Our emerging products are north of 40% growth. The OpenShifts, the CloudForms, the Ansibles, we're very successful, and it's only because you guys are voting with your dollars. So thank you very much. Thank you for the panelists today that participated earlier. Thank you for the speakers. And thank you for investing so much of your time today to spend with us. I hope it was of value. And we'll be around in the back if you'd like to talk with us and enjoy some cold bevies. And I think we got some snacks too, right, guys? Excellent. So thank you very much.